The Seeking Eye Life Exploration podcast is and will always be free to access. But if you would like to support my work, please consider joining my Patreon or signing up on YouTube as a channel member. By doing so, you will receive exclusive benefits, including early access to future podcast episodes, access to hosted discussion groups, and access to non-podcast supplementary videos. So click the join button underneath this video to join as a YouTube channel member, or find the link to my Patreon page in the description. Thank you.
There are different masters and different techniques, and some work better for others, and some work better for others. And I've tried the Monroe techniques in the past, and I found them kind of outdated. It's still interesting because he did everything from a scientific perspective, and I don't think he was like a particularly religious person or a spiritual person, so that made it more like a kind of like a research from a scientific point of view. But my story with astral projection, it's different because it's from the spiritual perspective, right? And I don't know if I told you about this, but it all started with sleep paralysis. Have you ever experienced it?
Not that I can remember, although I do know of it.
Yeah, well, it's the sensation that you wake up in the middle of the night and you can see your room, and it's like you're in your room, but for some reason you can't move, and a lot of people find it shocking, and that's what used to happen to me. And I know that in your last interview, the guest, what was his name?
Andre?
Yeah.
Do you mean Andre?
He also
the alchemist?
he also mentioned that for him it started with the sleep paralysis, correct? So it's really interesting because I believe astral projection starts with a change of perspective. Right? It's very interesting because we learn since we are in school and from society about the scientific method. And so that everything has to be through the scientific method, or else it's not real. But in reality, we know that there are so many phenomena happening that can't be measured by the scientific method. So it just means that so far, the scientific method hasn't created a way in which astral projection could be measured accurately, proven through the scientific method. So
I think the main reason for that is kind of generally in science, the idea is, well, if people can come out of their body and see things that they shouldn't have known, then they should also be able to do it under controlled conditions, and that's never happened. So why should we believe it's anything more than a fantasy?
Yeah, exactly. It's like it would be hard to do it in the right conditions to measure it. But I tell you, in my case, I was very open to these things from a spiritual perspective, and it was interesting because it started happening during a period where I was kind of like an atheist. I was raised a Catholic. I'm from Mexico, and in Mexico, almost everybody's a Catholic. Almost everybody believes in God. And when I was in university, for some reason, I turned into an atheist. I didn't believe anything. And astral projection actually changed that. And it was like the first step. But I was already open to the idea of the existence of UFOs and, ghosts and all of that metaphysical phenomena. So, and I had already heard about astral projection. So the moment that I told about my sleep paralysis experiences to a friend, and she said that she believed that that was related to astral projection, that was the moment in which I started to shift my view on what I was experiencing, and I started to research everything about it, and it it was the first time that I learned, let's say, a technique to do it, and that it actually worked. And by that I mean that I was a very curious child, and I was always reading about Ouija board. I remember I bought a Ouija board, and I was never able to make it work. Um, I also read books about psychic powers, and I really never had an experience. So this was the first time that I did a technique, and the technique, got me out of my body, and it was so incredible, so real. And I'm just telling you this because when it happens to you, I don't, I don't, I don't know if you're gonna be able to actually say, well, I'm not sure if my mind created that illusion, right? Like, because it just feels very real.
It's interesting because one of the major kind of prolific out of body experiences, Mikhail or Michael Raduga, um, he has a series on YouTube, of course, teaching you how to use his technique to get out of body, and he's been doing it now for many years. And yet he holds a very materialistic philosophy that it all is still taking place in the mind. So I wonder if he's having these experiences and they are as real as you say, which I don't doubt. Why do you think someone like that, who has been doing it for so long successfully, would consider it so, if it's so obviously not, if you know what I mean?
I think it has to do with the soul's journey. Like, I believe, and these are my spiritual beliefs, that we come to this life to learn different things. And so some people might have the need to learn about these phenomena from a more materialistic point of view, and maybe that point of view can shift at some point, depending on what happens with his experiences. um, I was having also out of body experiences, and I believed that my not my soul, but what they call the astral body was leaving my physical body. It's something that, of course, doesn't exist in like a materialistic point of view, because we cannot really measure the astral body. Um, and yet, when I was doing these things, when I was astral projecting, I was still an atheist for some time, and then I had like really bad experiences in my life where I actually considered taking my own life.
I've been there.
Yeah. So
Not a nice
and
place.
yeah, and you know what happened? Like one day when I was really tired, when I really wanted to quit everything, I started thinking maybe I can cause myself a heart attack with my mind. And I started to focus on that, like on stopping my heartbeat. And my heartbeat actually started to stop. Like I started feeling how, the beats were slowing down,
It is an
and it started to
Yeah, it is an interesting
huh?
phenomenon that's been recorded, isn't it, in monks and people that meditate are able to physically slow their heart through intention, if not stop.
Yeah, but I wasn't before that experience I really never meditated. I um i didn't train this thing, and it just happened just as astral projection happened. And at the end of the experience I decided to stop, and I felt like something was out there. Like, I would call it God. It's not like I saw something, I just felt something that was telling me, like, I love you, and I don't want you to die. And immediately after that I started to recover. I I had to take some depression pills for a while. But after that, I decided like there's a God. And when I started researching more about where the techniques to have out of body experiences came from, that's when I discovered that um, they came from what they called occult knowledge or esotericism. And so, yeah, that's also related to spirituality, of course. And so I can tell you that all of the techniques that I learned to leave my body come from an occult school, and that's my, let's say, perspective on astral projection, what has worked for me all of these years.
So when you say occult, immediately that raises negative connotations to many, considered either woo-woo nonsense or demonic. How would you define occult, and what do you think about those views of it?
Yeah, actually, the word occult or even esoteric or even mystic, it's kind of becoming outdated. But these were, let's say, the vocabulary that became really popular over the last century and on the 19th century as well. And what it means is that in religion, and this is the very interesting part, there were always, let's say, two chambers or two schools on every religion. And if you can research this from archaeological or anthropological or historic point of view, and um, if you research into religions, you will see that there were, for instance, in for the Greeks, they had what they call the mystery schools, like the Eleusinian mysteries, and the Egyptians they also had the mysteries of the pyramids. They had where priests basically detected people they consider to be, let's say, spiritually developed um, on a different level, and they had the theory that these people were souls that already had, let's say, a work through philosophy, through the real meaning behind religion, that they had an understanding that came from previous lives, and it was the priest's mission to teach this person um, what that person already knew, kind of like resume the person's spiritual journey. And so that's why they had these special schools or second chambers, um, which were not for the masses. When you go to church, either if you're a Christian or Buddhist or whatever, there's a part of religion that is for the general public, but they always have like special schools that are for people that are more spiritually developed. So because of um, how things were in the past, there were times where these people knew that these schools existed and they coexisted with the culture and they were respected. Nobody knew what the teachings were because they were secret. They were completely secret because it was always believed that they couldn't be shared to the general public, because if the general public found out, they would get confused, or they would get violent because they were not ready to understand them. So it came to a point where actually religion became, let's say, more corrupted, and then the persecutions started. And so different, let's say, countries and kings and cultures started to persecute these people, and so they went into hiding. And one of the best examples are the Templars, right? Because the Templars, they had the first hand opportunity of visiting the Holy Land, and they found out that, well, not all of the teachings of Jesus are what the Catholic Church was teaching the general public. They had access to scrolls, to other schools of Christianity that had a more advanced knowledge. And so that's why they had to go into hiding, and that's why they were called occult. At the same time, they are known as esoteric, because esoteric, it's the kind of knowledge that comes from the inside, from introspection, while there is something else called exoteric. It's a word that we don't even know um, much about, but it actually means like the superficial part. So what religion nowadays would be exoteric as opposed to esoteric. And so in the end, it's just terms that have become, let's say, people don't use them anymore because now it's believed that we live in a different era. The age of Aquarius is that's what people in the New Age movement and in many spiritual movements call it, and it's an age where everything it's available because nowadays all of this hidden knowledge you can access it on the internet, and you can read books about it, and you don't need to belong to one of these schools anymore.
I think there's a lot of esoteric knowledge that for me I can't really get on board with. Things like astrology and numerology and that sort of thing, I really struggle to see the legitimacy of, and I think that's more kind of a popular thing rather than an actual science. But when it comes to things like astral projection, out of body experience, which are effectively really the same kind of thing, just using different words to describe them, astral projection is definitely much more popular these days. I think that because there is that ability to kind of legitimize an experience for yourself, and as you say, most people, if not everybody really, that does this experience comes away with, and they say, it's not a belief that we are not just our bodies, it becomes a knowledge, an experiential knowledge. And that's what kind of got me into Robert Monroe initially, is his conviction that, we did this scientifically, we had these experiences, we explored these levels of consciousness. And one major thing is that you become incredibly free because you know that you don't die, that you do survive physical death, which was the whole point of my research, was to determine what happens when we die. It began kind of looking at near-death experiences mainly because that was the sort of person that was reaching out to me. But recently I've got back into kind of the out-of-body experience because, as I say, it's something that we can strive to experience for ourselves. And as a scientist by mind, that's what I want to do, to determine whether it's a legitimate thing or not, which I'm 85%, 95% sure that something's going on by the anecdotal evidence that's come out from those that practice it. But I think until I have the experience myself, there'll always be that reluctance to put a full belief into it.
Yeah, it's completely acceptable, and you could also put it as maybe you have it as a challenge, and that makes it really interesting. Recently I watched a TED Talk. I don't remember the name right now. I'll try to find out and send you the link. But it's about this researcher who talked about reality and how in reality there are different phenomena that are happening, maybe unlimited phenomena happening around us, but our senses are designed to just perceive like a very narrow spectrum of what's happening.
Was this Anil Seth?
So I think so. It kind of
Anil
rings a
Seth,
bell.
Donald Hoffman, they usually talk about that sort of thing.
I think Donald Hoffman. Yeah, actually,
Probably Donald
I think
Hoffman.
it was Donald Hoffman. Yeah. So I found that very interesting because um, that's why science has such a hard time measuring this, because not only the tools that science has, but also those tools are designed for the senses that we can perceive. But the interesting thing is that when you start to astral travel, you realize that you have other senses, and one of those senses would be the sense to perceive a higher dimension, which is what people call the astral plane, which is believed to happen in the fifth dimension. And if you see this as frequencies, then it happens in a higher frequency, right? I cannot tell you exactly in which frequency this happens, but yeah, I think if you get to have this experience, and I advise you to try the Monroe technique that you're having right now. And if that doesn't work, I can share with you some of the esoteric techniques that I learned. And one of the things that I tell people, that to me it's one of the reasons why I believe this is real and not something that my mind is creating, is because I've had the opportunity to talk to people in the astral plane and then meet those people in the physical plane. I don't know if you
I've
heard
heard
about that.
about that. Yeah, I've read Monroe's books, and he talks about that to some degree, at least.
Yeah.
But it was a while
So
ago.
how does he so how does he explain that?
I can't remember. I read these books a long time ago, in like 2019 or something like that. I remember because I was going to London. I was reading it on the train. It was such a boring trip. But I can't remember exactly how he explained it. Well, he doesn't try to explain it really. He just kind of documented that it happened. And I know that one of the experiments that he did with folks like Tom Campbell and others that he was working with at the time, they actively did that during one of their experimentation processes, where they came out of body, met each other, discussed certain things. You can find that on YouTube, and were able to then confirm what they were talking about afterwards. And they were in I think they were in isolated booths, so there was no chance of kind of physically being able to hear each other if they were talking or whatever. So it's certainly, as I say, things like that, although anecdotal, make me 95% sure that something's going on, and enough for me to want to kind of find out for myself. And that kind of thing is one that, because it happens to you and it can't be kind of done in a lab or with any kind of verification, it's one of those that's proof to you as an individual, but can't be proved kind of on a larger scale, which is why having the experience yourself. I mean, if I was to come out of my body and saw something ridiculous down the end of my road, like an eagle trying to try it on with a pigeon or something, then I went outside and saw exactly that. What could I do then? I couldn't doubt that, because that just shouldn't happen. So that's where kind of personal proof and general proof are very different.
Yes, I understand perfectly. It's well, like I said, it was for me as well. I always thought, I believe in these things, but they have to happen to me. And the first time that I was able to leave my physical body, that's when, to me, that was life changing, because it's like, wow, this is the first time that I read about it and I was able to do it myself. And that just changed everything, because it was like everywhere they tell you this is not possible, you're imagining and it. But you're right also, like, people need to experience this by themselves, because I can tell you a lot about all of my experiences and it can be entertaining, but you need to experience it for yourself. But the beautiful thing is that there are a lot of techniques out there to try. Maybe after you finish with the Monroe technique, like I said, I can share one of my
That'd be
techniques and you
great.
can try it for a while. The first times that I began to have out of body experiences, I was mostly in my apartment, and little by little I was getting further away from my physical body. At the beginning, it was not easy to do, and finally I started to come out to the outside. And it was interesting because the streets were kind of empty. Well, of course, this usually happened at night. And then little by little, I started to encounter people. But it was interesting because the people, they were dressed, they looked exactly the way they look in the physical world, but they couldn't see me. They seemed to be distracted. And later I found out that what happened is that they were already in the astral plane with their astral bodies, but they were seeing images from their dreams, because dreams also happen in the same astral plane, in the fifth dimension. So what happens is that um, it's like you have, let's say, the external reality, which your body, your mind, not necessarily not your mind, interprets it, forms images, shapes, and gives it meaning. And this is from, let's say, outside stimuli. Maybe what's really around us is just energy or atoms. Actually, it's like that, right? And so the brain, the mind, is what gives it the shape of, okay, this is a microphone, but in reality, these are just particles, just you know, um, circling in space in space. And so you have the external stimuli, but you also have the images that your own mind is creating, right? So when you are in the astral plane, mm, many times people see the images that their mind is creating from inside, like let's say from memory, from interpretations, from the subconscious, about things that are happening in their lives, and the subconscious starts playing those images and those interpretations when they are sleeping. And so they can't see, like, let's say, the external stimuli of the astral plane. So they look as if they were sleepwalking, right? They and sometimes actually you can call them and they can perceive you slightly, like I don't know. I've seen my parents, for instance, when I used to visit my parents, I would astral project, and sometimes I would see them in the room, and I was like trying to wake them up in the astral plane, and I was like, "Mom, Dad, you're in the astral plane. You're dreaming." And it's like they could hear me, like, "Oh, yes, son," and they were then distracted somewhere else, and I didn't even know what they were dreaming about. But it's like they could hear me, but they didn't fully connect or become aware the same way that a sleepwalking person works. I mean, you can see somebody who's sleepwalking. You can talk to them and they might respond, but at the same time they're busy doing their thing.
So in the dreams, you're in the astral plane, not physically, but you're in the astral plane in reality. But what you're experiencing is in your mind, kind of. So you're not experiencing the external reality of the astral plane. You're experiencing just what although you can intrude in on that slightly.
Yes, exactly. That's what happened to those people that I saw in the astral plane, until one day, it came to a point, actually, I believe, like a very small percentage of the people can consciously be aware in the astral plane. What do I mean by that? When I'm telling you these stories of people sleepwalking, that means that everybody, and this is something that I learned through experience, but also through the esoteric school I belong to, that everybody leaves their physical body when the physical body rests. In other words, the something called the astral body, which is one of different bodies of existence that we possess, is not the same as the soul. The soul is like a very complex subject. So every time the physical body sleeps, the astral body leaves the physical body. It's like a way that helps to recharge, let's say, the physical body. And um, and so that's why I could see the people outside, but they were just not. I mean, that's why I could see the people in the astral plane in their astral bodies, but they were just not conscious, because most people are not conscious that they are in the astral plane. Most people are dreaming, or there are like different levels. Like, if you don't remember your dreams, you are, like, let's say, at the bottom of let's say, consciousness. Like, that means you're living very distracted, and maybe meditating or practicing remembering dreams, because that's how you start, like, remembering dreams. There are techniques in which you can start remembering the dreams, and if you keep remembering the dreams and writing them down in a diary, then the next, actually, it helps you to gain lucidity in your dreams, what we call as lucid dreaming, or it actually also helps you to better astral project, like a direct astral projection. So what I mean is like there's a very small percentage of people that can be conscious in the astral plane, but one day I actually met like the first person that I was conscious in the astral plane, and that was quite an amazing experience because I met that person. It was a woman. I met her in the astral plane before I met her in the physical plane. So basically, when we met in the physical plane, she was a coworker, and and on my first day of at work, she told me, "Hey, do you know something about astral projection?" And I was like, "Yes. Why do you ask?" Because we met in one astral travel, and I was like, "Are you the girl that?" And she's like, "Yes, yes, that was me." And then she showed me her place, her house in the physical world, and it looked exactly the same that I saw at that experience in the astral world. Because sometimes the astral world shows you like almost the exact version of physical places.
But there are common reports that it can be distorted as well. Certain details, especially numbers and text, I see a lot is often distorted.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's actually that's a really funny thing, but that's one of the things in which you can know that you are dreaming. Actually, it's something that you must remember. Like every time that you try to read something or that you try to see the numbers, they change, and so most of the time it's like we insist. But if you train yourself to lucid dream, then it comes a time when that actually helps you to realize that you're dreaming. So yeah, not everything is the same. It's not meant to be the same. I believe when it comes to houses, um, they have like a very strong, let's say, psychic energy because we give them that energy, so they appear that way in the astral plane. But only because our mind remembers them as such. And that's why when you start to astral travel, the further away you get from your house, the more different the astral plane starts to look.
So I suppose the clarity and the realisticness, whatever that means, of an object or a place depends on how strongly emotionally attached you are to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how. For instance, the it's like if I tell you, maybe you can walk in your apartment with your eyes closed and you kind of recognize where you are and where things are. And so that actually helps in the astral plane sort of to guide you when you have just come out of your physical body, because that's like, okay, I'm in my house, I recognize everything, and the moment you come out, that's when things start to change.
So, what is the difference then generally between, in terms of levels of reality, between lucid dreaming and astral projection or astral travel?
Well, I teach both things because mm when you're lucid dreaming, what happens is that you are in the middle of a dream. So you could be, you know, when you many times when you're dreaming, you don't know that you're dreaming, so you just follow along. Uh, but suddenly, when you become lucid, you can train yourself to suddenly realize, like, oh, I'm dreaming. And so at that moment, I take it like an opportunity to explore the astral plane. So I start to ignore the dream characters because I know that most of the time they were created by my mind. And if I give them attention, then it's like getting
And you
distracted.
just stay in the
It's
dream.
like, yeah, it's the same thing that happens when you meditate. Like when you meditate, um, you are not supposed to follow your thoughts. So when you are in a lucid dream, your thoughts become people, let's say, and you're not supposed to follow them. Um, so, and the difference between that and astral projection is that when you, let's say, astral project, or when you do the direct astral projection, you don't give your mind time to dream. You let your body, your physical body, fall asleep, and at that moment, your consciousness exits your physical body through your astral body. So it's better in the sense that like it's easier not to fall into a dream, and then, you know, when you fall into a dream, you stop being conscious about it, that you are in the dream, and there comes a time when you even lose consciousness, and that's when everything blacks out, and then it's like you wake up and you forget parts. Maybe you remember part of the dream, maybe you remember you were lucid, but you lost the control and the ability. So that's the main difference. But at the same time, with me, there was a time when I was trying the techniques to astral project every night, and I was being successful. And then for some reason, it started becoming difficult to do the direct astral projection. So for some reason, it started happening in my dreams. I started remembering that I was dreaming and I was becoming lucid. And once you stay lucid for a while, and once you focus in your dream, in your lucid dream, then the dream images start to disappear, and then you start seeing the astral plane in a more, let's say, clear way, you know, in a way where your thoughts and your subconscious are not, let's say, contaminating the experience, but you are more focusing on perceiving the external reality of the astral plane, which is the fifth dimension.
And is the astral plane similar to physical reality? Is the astral plane kind of an ontologically definite place, or is it a lot more kind of malleable by our mindset? Whereas, for example, you know, on the physical world, if you look at a mountain, that mountain looks the same for everybody, and you can't change it. Is that the same in the astral? So there's some foundational, real basis to it, or is it very much a mental thing?
Well, I believe, for instance, in this example about the mountain, we might assume that it looks the same for everybody, right? But how can we know that? How can I know what a mountain looks for you? Um, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Let's try to be like explain this in a more, you know, in a way that we understand. Um, Things are more malleable for sure, like a lot. Basically, there's a law that esotericists and believe that it's called the law of attraction. We've all heard about it, and it's believed that that law also exists in the in this three-dimensional plane. But in the astral plane, this law, it's like instantaneous. So basically, what you think is what happens. So if you want to reshape the mountain, you can do it with your thoughts. Is very malleable. So the mystics explain this by saying that this three-dimensional world has 48 laws, and the astral plane has 24 laws. So the less laws, the more freedom there is, and the ease, because it's easier to do everything. You know, the laws, they act as constraints, right? So that's the main difference. But at the same time, the the astral plane can be a very objective, but it can also be a very subjective place. That's the interesting thing. And at the same time, um, you know, we like to call the three-dimensional world the physical plane, because it's just easier to remember that, to you know, we're familiar with that word. But the astral plane, the fifth dimension, is also a physical dimension, because it has shapes, it has forms, and that's what would make it physical. It's just not as dense as this density, right? Because it's believed that after the fifth dimension, after the astral plane, we find the sixth dimension, which is also called the causal world, the world of causes. and it's an electronic world. So that's when there's no shape. So it's not physical anymore. It's like the famous Einstein um, E equals mc square, right? So the sixth dimension or causal world, also it's an energetic world. It's a world where you perceive things as energy, and starting from the astral plane and going down to our reality, it's different levels where that energy shows itself with a higher density or condensation, what we call matter.
So you mentioned that while dreaming, we are all kind of out of body in this astral realm. So in that case, why is there periods of dreamless sleep where we seemingly have no consciousness during sleep?
Well, I believe there might be also like a period of transition where you haven't started. I believe that it doesn't take long before the astral body leaves the physical body, right? It might take seconds, it might take minutes, but you don't necessarily, the brain, the mind does not necessarily start producing dreams right away. Like you go through different, let's say, frequencies, right? And so there are these two different things. Like I believe everybody leaves their body when the physical body sleeps, and everybody at the same time dreams. I believe everybody dreams. Sorry, it's just that um, not everybody remembers the dreams, and the dreams can be very long. Can be very long if we consider them in physical time. Maybe you dream for, I don't know, hours, but in the end, um, what you remember when you remember your dreams, it's like you're only remembering, let's say, minutes. But it happens that if you study your dreams, you're always in the middle of something, right? So it's like you miss a lot of things because you don't remember that. And so that's also like the mystics believe that when you start training a lot for astral projection and meditation, and this is something that is actually taught to Tibetan monks, of how it's one of the um, the things that they need to accomplish in their studies. They call them the ability to navigate the bardos. The bardos are these levels where you are not in your physical body, right? So the levels of transition. So it is said that, let's say, a Tibetan Lama that is very advanced on these teachings can completely remember his dreams and can completely be aware in the astral plane after falling as after the physical body falls asleep. So in other words, that means that those people are conscious the 24 hours.
With the law of attraction slash manifestation etc. being a lot more instantaneous on the astral plane, what are kind of the limits with that? So I'd imagine you can shape landscapes etc. So if someone say wanted to, I don't know, summon or create a favourite movie character or something, which I've heard a lot of people do for fun, and that character appears and is seemingly conscious and thinks for itself, is that something that's possible, and how would that work? Because in terms of that character seeming or being conscious, because that seems difficult for me to understand.
Well, I don't know if the character would be conscious, but you can definitely project it, right? And it's like when I was a kid, I wanted to bring the Care Bears. I don't know if you ever watched that cartoon,
I know of them.
into the three-dimensional
Mm.
world, and it didn't work, right? And so I'm an adult now, so I haven't tried to bring the Care Bears into the astral plane because I do other kinds um, of research in the astral plane. But I've been able to manifest a lot of things that I just think about in the astral plane. Even let's say anime powers
Mm.
or moves. I've
I'm
done
sure a
that
lot of
that
people would,
experiment, and I
especially men, would enjoy doing that.
yeah, and I think it's explained because by the lack of certain constraints, what they call laws or limitations, and I believe all of those limitations are just limitations established by the mind. And I don't know if you read the Bible, and I'm not telling you this as a, like I'm from let's say you read the Bible and it talks about Jesus. There's this part where he starts to walk on water, and um, and I think Peter tries to do the same, and he starts doing the same, and then he starts to sink, and Jesus tell him like you need to have faith, and you have little faith, and that's what happened. And of course, you might believe that maybe this that is told in the Bible is not true. Maybe it's a story for people that believe in Jesus or whatever. But I come to believe in this, and I've seen it manifest in the physical world and in the astral world. That definitely the mind, produces reality, and so that's why faith is so important, because if our mind filters what's outside and gives it meaning, all of the protons and electrons and atoms that are flying around us, if our mind is powerful enough to give it meaning, if we program our mind, which is so powerful, to let go of certain constraints, then definitely we can see stuff that we normally don't see in the physical world, and do stuff that maybe levitate, because this is also something that the yogis in India talk a lot about, like the possibility of acquiring these capabilities in the physical world. But all of that, of course, it's just way easier to do in the astral plane. But at the same time, it also depends on your faith. It's way easier to do in the astral plane, but if you start doubting many things, then they won't happen in the astral plane, and that has happened to me as well. That it was so easy for me to do certain explorations when I started to astral travel. And then I don't know what happened, that things started becoming more difficult. And I think I maybe reprogrammed my mind, or it became so, I don't know exactly what happened, that I needed to kind of rethink the way I do stuff in the astral plane in order to manifest what I wanted and to carry on the research that I wanted.
So, how can kind of having faith, or would probably best to start off with, how would you define faith in this regard?
Well, faith has to do with your beliefs. Like when you tell, I'm just gonna tell you a story that it's just as extraordinary as what we're talking about, and of course you have all the right to doubt it. But when I was a kid, I once saw a gnome. I saw a gnome. This gnome came out of a wall, like it came through the wall, and I was 5 years old. And you might say, well, this is a kid's imagination, but I was not alone. There was a nanny with me, and this nanny was like 16 years old, and she saw it as well. We saw it at the same time. And so we ran and we told my mother what we had seen. And my mother told us, like, no, no, you must have, you imaginated it, or maybe you saw like a crazy person. Uh, and I was trying to like explain to my mom, but it came through the wall. And my mom was trying to commit, like, find logical ways to explain this. And I feel it's like the brain, that society has conditioned us to believe certain things, because it has to do with survival. I believe the stuff that we see, that we perceive, and the stuff that society teaches us uh, is aimed to help us to survive. And so everything that doesn't seem like necessary for survival, such as seeing gnomes. It's like if we don't accept it, if we don't, let's say, um, have, let's say, a belief in it, then it stops being part of our reality. And I believe faith has to do with that. Like faith is just the belief. I mean, the way that faith is described in religions is the belief that something extraordinary can happen, that something like a miracle, or that God can speak to you, and God can be like a very subjective, because we don't, I mean, we don't perceive God with the physical eyes or whatever. But faith is something like that, like for a moment you stop, let's say, thinking that you need to see it with your senses, and you just believe that it can happen. And I believe that at some point it can happen with your senses, because I saw this phenomena with my eyes, right?
So my question was going to be then, defining faith in that way, I struggle to believe that through faith we can cause miracles, I suppose, to happen on the physical plane, like walking on water, because in the physical reality there are the laws of physics. So we would have to be, going against the laws of physics in order to achieve these things. I don't see how kind of a mind alone can do that.
Yeah, but the laws of physics, you can see them as a concept, right? Like, by the way, who came up with the name the laws of physics? How were they measured? I mean, everything was created from the scientific method. So the scientific method is a method that is designed to measure things on its own method. But it's like there could be unlimited methods in the universe to perceive reality that we just haven't discovered. So I believe that our beliefs, or society's beliefs in these laws, in these limitations, are what actually cause these constraints. Like maybe there is something called the law of gravity, but you can also break the law of gravity, not actually breaking it, but actually just uh,
Forcing
since
yourself
everything
against it.
is science accepts that the camera you're using right now could also be a frequency, could also be atoms that have certain concentration, and our eyes are designed to see it that way, right? But everything is an interpretation that our mind is making of reality. So if the mind is so powerful and it can change that interpretation, then the laws wouldn't apply to you if your mind can be that powerful. And this is something that, like I said, even these days, it's a belief that is very powerful. Let's say in places like India, that believe in the existence of siddhis, which are powers or abilities that many yogis were believed to have. And so there, even these days, there are accounts of yogis or Tibetan lamas that for 1 year meditated without drinking water or taking any food, and they survived, right? And so, how did they do that? Like the body is supposed to have certain rules as to what has to go in and how much it can sustain itself without this nourishment, right? So we hear those stories happening all the time. It's just that it's as simple as this. If you visit a culture that is more open to this phenomena, they will be completely, let's say, of course, everybody these days believe in the scientific method. It's like universal, but they also are more open to the probability that the reality can be defied, defeated, or that the metaphysical is possible. And maybe what actually helped me with my ability to astral project, or when I saw that gnome when I was a kid, is that I'm Mexican, and in the Mexican culture, the indigenous peoples, before the arrival of the Spaniards, they believed in these things. They believed in gnomes. They actually there's this famous Mayan pyramid in the state of Chiapas. I was there once.
Is that
That
Chichen Itza?
there's
No, that's
no,
somewhere else,
no, it's
isn't
not
it?
that one.
Yeah.
It's the one that you visit on a boat in this river that is on the border with Guatemala. It's a pretty cool archaeological site. But in one of the pyramids, in one of the steps, there's a glyph that has like a carving of that shows gnomes, and it shows them
With the
actually with
hat.
a, and it's not like somebody saw that and interpreted that as, oh, I believe those are gnomes, and in reality they are something else. But somebody said that no, actually they are part of the literature, of the surviving beliefs that the Mayans and the Aztecs and the peoples of ancient Mexico believed. They are called aluches, or they are called chechenes, and it's the name they would give to gnomes, and they believe that every house had a gnome that actually took care of it. So I'm talking about these things because those are beliefs that somehow survived even after the colonization. And so that's why if you ask people about this, a lot of people in Mexico, they will tell you that they believe in the existence of gnomes and that they have seen gnomes. A lot of people will tell you that. And it happens in, like, let's say, if you ask Iranian people about this, if you ask somebody from Iran um, about what they call jinns, which is something very similar, because jinns are creatures from another dimension, they will see that either them or a relative has seen a jinn, because it's just very strongly in their culture. And when Islam arrived to what's now Iran, it was incorporated into Islam. So that's why jinns are part of Islamic literature, and so that's why in a country like that, people will have more beliefs in that.
Mm. So it's almost as if, as you mentioned with the law of attraction, that although it isn't kind of instantaneous over here, it can take effect, and maybe the joint beliefs of a people can manifest these things into reality, or at least limit the amount of blockages that prevent them from being perceived.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, astral projection got me into spirituality, and that's when I started to research about these topics, such as the law of attraction. And basically, what I do is I train myself through meditation and through observation, attention, in order to bring what I want to my life, because I believe the mind is so powerful. So if you can change your mind, you can also shape your reality. And so I believe in a future where we'll be able to manifest everything that we wanted, maybe instantaneously. And people that belong to many spiritual groups and esoteric groups, they believe in a future where this um, current humanity will have like a quantum leap into a higher dimension. I don't know if you heard about this topic. It's called the ascension. It's a very popular topic out there. People are saying that the frequency of the earth is going to increase, and so we're going to stop living, or identifying ourselves with the three-dimensional world, and instead we're going to live in a higher dimension, either the fourth or the fifth, where we'll be able to manifest what we want easier, with less constraints, and less limitations, and therefore more happy place. But these are beliefs.
So just touching on the law of attraction, that's one again that I struggle to believe, mainly through kind of personal experience. I've been doing spiritual research for a long time, and of course I've come across law of attraction, manifestation, and there was a time when I invest in cryptocurrency, and I had a good amount at one point, and I had no doubt that this was going to just sustain and be perfectly feasible for a long time. And I believed that honestly. And as of today, I'm down about 97%, and I'm completely broke. So I struggle to believe in the law of attraction for that reason, because I had no doubt that I would be comfortable now with what I had, and it all just completely went through the floor against what I had completely expected to happen. So for me, that kind of cast doubt on the idea of the law of attraction.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like the law of attraction hasn't been figured out completely because the 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 mind is so complex. So maybe you could say, I'm expecting the cryptocurrencies to go up, but there are parts of you in your subconscious, in many layers, many things that you have learned that don't agree with you, right? So it's like it's the mind is very complex. Um, but something that I have understood, and which I think even psychologists agree with, is that thinking on the positive, it's way better for your mental health, and to actually carry out things in your life than focusing on the negative. Like, I don't believe any major discovery or advantage has come from being negative. And the perfect example of this are sports people, like professional athletes. They work a lot on their beliefs, and they don't say like, oh, I'm gonna lose, or they think about, I'm gonna win. And you know this is generally, it's like almost common sense for any athlete to focus on the positive outcome. So in a way, it's like they are focusing on the law of attraction in a way, but it's still like not every athlete is gonna win a gold medal, that's for sure. um, so it's like one of those things that I believe we're still we're still working on as a species, because the law of attraction is pretty new. We People didn't really practice this or know about this concept, like, let's say, even 50 years ago, right? So all of a sudden it's very popular. So um, I like to work a lot on psychology, on my own psychology. And I can tell you that when I compare the psychology of my parents or the psychology of my grandparents, you see that basically people before didn't even understand psychology, and they didn't work on psychology. And that's why sometimes they carry a lot of problems, a lot of wounds, because of their lack of understanding of psychology. So what I'm saying is that in the same way, the law of attraction is something that we are still trying to incorporate right now, and maybe possibly our children will understand it better, and maybe they will be able to manifest it better, and maybe it will be more apparent. And I'm theorizing, but I theorize that in the future, you know the law of attraction will probably not be a mystery anymore.
I think the world at the moment, the way the mess it's in, could certainly use some, physically and politically, the way the world is, could use some positivity at the moment. So I'm thinking from a logical standpoint. So, and let's talk about it in terms of cryptocurrency and investments, because I understand that. So you've got a particular asset, 1 million people want to buy it, but they want it to go lower so they can buy it. And 1 million people have already bought it and they want it to go higher so they can sell it. So they both equally believe that it wants to go both ways. So what determines whose law of attraction works in that case?
Well, that's very interesting. That what you're asking right now. I was taught, but I also discovered by myself that the law of attraction doesn't work when the one that is thinking about what um, wants to manifest, it's the psychological aggregates. What do I mean by that? Um, like spiritual speaking, there's a consciousness that is the real you, right? There's something also that manifests in all of us that is called the ego, or the Buddhists call it the psychological aggregates. And the psychological aggregates are like a software that we create with the mind, and is a software that makes us suffer because it's the software that um, has like cravings, right? So when we think maybe like, oh, I want to manifest a Ferrari, let's say, or I want the cryptocurrencies to go up, you need to think why you want the cryptocurrencies to go up, or more specific. And when you start thinking about that, you realize that many times it's actually the ego or the psychological aggregate who wants to manifest the fact that the cryptocurrencies go up. So, for instance, I can tell you, I totally agree with abundance and prosperity, and I want to bring that into my life. And I believe I live in abundance and prosperity. Um, but at the same time, a lot of people, when they want to manifest, let's say, money, they want to manifest money because they think, I don't have enough money. I'm lacking money. And this is one of the things that the law of attraction tells you, that you need to really focus on who wants to manifest and why. And when the real you wants to manifest something, then you feel an inspiration, because it's like a positive energy, because that's the real you. And the negative you is just, it feels it's negative because it's the end is the cravings that are taking energy from you. And the cravings are like a software, but they take your energy, so they also have this frequency. And so I know this because I've also wanted I made a lot of experiments with the law of attraction, and I realized that many times I couldn't manifest what I wanted because I craved it. And so if I craved it, it means that I was unhappy. And so if I was unhappy, it was not the real me who wanted these things, but the craving. And so a lot of times when I started to like really let go and say like, I don't need this anymore, or I'm happy, I already have it. Like truly, it's not sometimes it's not as easy, or it might be easier for some people than others. But when you can truly let go, it's like sometimes you manifest things. So I see that as, or according to my beliefs, or the mystic beliefs, is that you are manifesting it, the real you is manifesting this. And so sometimes maybe cryptocurrencies, I think it's like a struggle where a lot of people are manifesting through the psychological aggregates, and that's why it's like sometimes hard to manifest it.
Sure. Okay. So I suppose moving on to kind of the main focus of my interest in this, what is your opinion as a astral projector, as having looked into these spiritual matters and esoteric matters for so long? What's your idea on death? What death is? What happens to us after death?
Well, I also believe that death is an illusion because the consciousness continues. And um, and the easiest way to describe it is that your consciousness continues alive in your astral body, right? And according to my spiritual beliefs, my esoteric beliefs, there is something called reincarnation, which means that after some time, and depending on your karma, which is and your dharma, which is also another law, the law of action and reaction, um, you manifest the right conditions to be born again in a body that has a different aspect that better embodies like the new version of you, because in every life you get um, like different learnings. But in the end, what your this different body that you manifest, it's also an illusion, right? Because like I said, this phase that you see, it's just like atoms moving through space, right? So it's like the the mind is what gives it meaning. So when I started to astral project, it was also very fulfilling for me because I just knew that once I die, I will continue living in the astral plane, which is a far better place because there are less laws and therefore it's a way happier place. And this is something that I know because every time that I'm in the astral plane, it's marvelous and I can do a lot of incredible stuff over there. And that at some point I will have to come back, and that it will suck because I will forget everything from my past lives unless I awaken, which is something that I learned in my studies, that if you awaken, um, if you fully awaken, then there's no reason to reincarnate anymore because you break the cycle of reincarnation, because the cycle of reincarnation is like a limitation or an illusion created by your mind. But when you know better, when you truly awaken, then you reprogram your mind, and you no longer have to die, and you no longer have to come to a more denser reality such as the three-dimensional world. You can stay in 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 realities that are less dense, like the astral plane, or even the the worlds that are not physical, like the sixth um, dimension and the seventh dimension, which according to mystics are um, where the heavens from religions are located.
And there's often a lot of question about, so once we die, before we reincarnate, what sort of things do we do during that period of time? Well, say time, because I know time would be different, but what 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 sort of things would we do as individuals, I suppose, from the time of death until through to the next reincarnation?
Well, actually, I have observed part of what happens because I've had the opportunity to talk to people that have died or that have recently passed. And basically, what happens is that for a lot of people, and I'm telling you this from my experience. Like in the end, you can only see this if you get to astral project. But basically, a lot of people don't even realize that they are dead, right? Because um, their minds still, project the hospital where they are bedridden, or the last pains that they suffered, or after that they start like recreating their jobs, their lives the way it was in the three-dimensional world. um, like I said, like when you see people that are sleepwalking in the astral plane, it's the same. But at the same time, there are, of course, beings that are more evolved, which help these people to realize that they have transitioned into another reality. And they teach them how to, they teach them everything they need to know about their next lives. Like, you need to come back, and you need to have a different life in which, in this occasion, you will have to do this in order to learn this thing that you need to learn in order to keep evolving. Because I believe the objective of all of this, of this cycle of death and rebirth is for us to keep evolving, of our consciousness to keep evolving. I think that's the whole point. And it is my belief that actually the reason why we are here is because um, we are supposed to be gods in a physical body, but we have to realize that we are gods in a physical body, and at the same time we carry so many defects, so many, let's say, psychological aggregates, so many illusions that we need to process. And that's the whole idea of this life, to be able to understand these things and to keep progressing until there comes a point where we realize, like, hey, all of those lives that I had were an illusion. I remember them completely. I remember my origin, and I know what's next, and I can transition, and I can have like a more fulfilling existence. I think, those are my beliefs, and I have observed many of these things in my research in the astral plane. So at the end is like I said, you need to experience it in order to, let's say, believe it, because otherwise um, there's only faith, and faith can take you so far. But yeah, I agree with you. You also need to experience it, and that's why.
And I think
Yeah,
to have proper faith in anything, you need to have reason to have faith in it in the first place. Otherwise, it's just hope.
yeah. So I'm telling you, in my case, it's just a combination of being raised in a religious background, then becoming an atheist, but then experiencing something metaphysical, and then kind of like gaining my faith again, and at the same time researching in the astral plane and discovering things, and that's what has shaped my current beliefs. But yes, in the end, it's a ride, and I believe when it's your chance, you will also start experiencing these things, and maybe this will change you, and maybe that's a good thing.
I hope so.